Is the camera on?
No, here.
Hi everyone, I am the final boss of people who spend too much time on TikTok. Look, we're experimenting with the looks, okay? If I hear a single comment, God help me, okay? There seems to be a symbiotic relationship between TikTok trends and essayists. Like many spaces dominated by young women, exaggerated by the insanely precise algorithm, of course, TikTok churns out trends and cultural moments at a breakneck speed, orbiting around this beaming source of endless cringe like space dust that never solidified into a proper planet. There's us! The think piece girlies, the intellectual young women, the professional overthinkers who seem to chronically and pointlessly beg a culture to slow down. Just a little bit, just please, just give me a second. We're on the outskirts of the zeitgeist, probably because we use words like zeitgeist, desperately trying to answer a question that low-key every young woman is asking since the beginning of time, which is, how do I want to live my life as a modern woman? As a think piece girly myself, subscribe to my Patreon please and thank you, I know that which trends I decide to milk for life lessons says a lot more about me than it says about the trends themselves. My, at this point, borderline obsession with the Gen Z bimbo trend, documented in this video essay in which I look extremely attractive, thanks for noticing, was really about the grief of letting go of my identity as a quote-unquote smart child. And in the same way, the fixation that some Substack hotties have for NPC TikTok live streams.
Yes, strong woman. Oh, special. Oh, special.
Is not really about whatever the hell Pinky Doll is doing, but rather about what the writer's insecurities are around self-objectification. Think pieces, video essays, even tweets are often just a fancy way to take the messaging that we're given by culture, by TikTok in particular, I would argue these days, and elaborate it into something that resembles a life lesson, a life philosophy. We're meticulously combing through the noise and hopefully coming out on the other side with a more solid sense of identity. This is, by the way, a healthy and normal part of growing up. I'm not implying that we shouldn't do it. Everyone, I would argue, is taking in society's messaging and mashing it into somewhat cohesive set of ideas, also known as building a personality. But I ask you, can we take it too far? What young women do and think has always been the center of attention from mainstream medias, but nowadays there is a new layer to this level of scrutiny that we all experience. Since us women are not completely silent in society anymore, we analyze and judge each other's response to that terrible question of how do I want to live my life as a modern woman? It's not just a bunch of weird middle-aged men telling girls that women these days are showing simultaneously too much skin and not enough skin, like it was in the 80s. Now we also do it to each other, oftentimes in the name of feminism. So in this essay, I actually want to analyze what happens when feminism is used as an excuse to watch and judge other women. We use it as a stick to beat each other up with. I am extremely fun at parties, in case you couldn't tell. So, feminism brought us an incredible degree of liberation from oppressive gender roles that, up until the generation of my grandma, really trapped women in terrible lives and abusive marriages. Women are now no longer confined to a lifetime of household servitude and misery. And that's a good thing. This is the internet, so I'm reminding you that. I am and always will be a feminist because I oppose workplace discrimination, I oppose gendered violence, I oppose gender stereotypes, I oppose unequal pay, I oppose the devaluation of domestic and care labor. Basically, there's a bunch of issues that I don't like, and feminism is somewhat of a solution to that, so I am a feminist. In no contradiction to what I just said, I want to recognize that modern women are faced with the emotionally difficult task of caving a path for ourselves. We have to choose how much we want feminism to influence our lives, and that's not an easy thing. There are no sure answers to this because it's all very new and weird, and I feel like a lot of us feel lost. A lot of us feel like we have an angel and a devil on our shoulders. One is yelling at us that not shaving our legs is disgusting and unfeminine, and the other one is telling us that by shaving we are enslaved to the patriarchy or whatever. It's easy to say just do what you want, but we all know that it's not that easy in practice. Growing up is the process of figuring out what it is that we want, so often we don't have that internal compass in our teenage years and 20s. I feel like feminism is now one of the many forces that we have to contend with as we go through puberty and find our identity. It's up on the same shelf as the fear of disappointing our parents. It's a part of growing up. And I suspect that a lot of us want to feel productively engaged in the gender debate because we care, but we also really have no idea what the hell we're supposed to do. This individual pressure that we feel comes from a, in my opinion, slightly wrong idea of what feminism does and is supposed to do. Because feminism is not concerned with what you as an individual decide to do. Some public figures will tell you that you should do this and you should do that in the name of feminism, but I don't think that's quite right. I think feminism is nothing but a set of academic tools that is supposed to criticize and change society at large. Let's give an example. For example, our society sends the message through advertisement and media that women have to shave their armpits and their legs, we have to shave, and failing to do so is disgusting and extremely unattractive. Feminism then comes along and points out that, hey, this idea is actually a construct of advertisement, and the pressure to conform to beauty standards is of direct benefit to the billion-dollar industry that is the beauty industry. Basically, feminism comes along and says, hey, this is actually a construct of advertisement, and we're kind of not okay with it. However, what you decide to do as an individual, whether or not you want to shave your armpits, that is and always will be your choice. You are condemned to be free in a way, because feminism can't really tell you what to do. Feminism points out that not shaving goes against the societal beauty standards, but it doesn't really tell you not to shave. And by the way, even if feminism did tell you what to do, you almost always have a choice not to listen, so ultimately it is your choice. You are always ultimately the one who takes the razor to your own legs. Society's gender roles are the devil on your shoulder, feminism is the angel, or I guess vice versa, depending on how you see it. But who do you decide to listen to in the end is your choice to make. With the mainstreaming of feminism talking points that we saw in the last decade, many young women are faced now with a lot more dilemmas. We have all devils and angels on our shoulders for all sorts of small life decisions, from how much we want to diet and shave, to what kind of man we want to date, to how much sex we want to have, how much makeup we want to use. All of these little things are now feminist dilemmas, in a way. This, in my opinion, happens more to young women, because when we are young, we don't have a very strong sense of self, and so we're more susceptible to society's messaging. This kind of low-level, feminist, silent judging of our own action becomes another way in which we scrutinize our own behavior and become self-critical. I feel like we swim all the time in an ocean of pseudo-personal theory, which is kind of confusing, because on one side, it's a bunch of discussions that are really intimate, right? Like, we're talking about what kind of partner we want to have, what kind of life we want to live, like this is very intimate. But on the other side, I feel like theory asks us to look at the bigger picture, to not make it personal. So it is very personal, but we're not supposed to treat it like it is, and I find this very confusing. Basically, I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do. I definitely did not know what the hell I was supposed to do when I was in my early 20s, and I have a feeling that a lot of you don't know what you're supposed to do either. With all of this confusion, a quick but efficient way we have to find answers is to copy the answers of someone else. Women, and recently men too, but that's a story for another essay, become feminist role models when they start answering the question of how do I want to live my life as a modern woman in a public way. What we regard as feminist role models are usually just people who are sharing bits and pieces of their answer. For example, I would argue that the archetype of the girl boss, which I would argue is the first quote-unquote modern woman archetype that millennials and Gen Z got fed by the culture, this whole girl boss mode, was born out of an attempt to reconcile a tradition, like, feminine tradition, with a feminist new messaging. And this is, by the way, not a negative thing. I'm analyzing the phenomenon, I'm not criticizing it. Girl boss, brackets, non-derogatory. The most famous girl bosses, like Sophia Amoruso and Sheryl Sandberg, sorry for butchering it, had some elements borrowed from tradition, like they were in some ways traditionally feminine women. For example, they cared about their physical appearance, they presented in a feminine way with like makeup and long hair, they decided to have children, at least one of them I think did. They also had traditional marriages with like a husband and all of that, but also they had some elements that were perceived as out of line for women at the time, like they were the CEO of a big company, they were making more money than their husband, they were being assertive, they were taking up spaces, I think one of them like decided to not step back in her career after having kids, which at the time was kind of a huge deal. So yeah, they had all of these elements of disruption, if you want to call it like that. Sophia Amoruso and Sheryl Sandberg were probably asking themselves this question of how do I want to live my life as a modern woman? And they decided to share at least part of their answers with the public. These are the elements of the tradition that I'm keeping, and these are the ones that I'm letting go of as a modern woman. I would say that a lot of the women who become feminist icons take some elements of tradition and combine it with some elements of disruption. So maybe, for example, they present in a stereotypically feminine way, you know, they wear a hijab, they wear colorful makeup, they wear their hair long, they have feminine clothes, but also they do some things that are perceived as disruptive. Like, for example, they don't shave a certain part of their bodies that they're supposed to, or maybe they are opinionated or blunt, physically strong, business-oriented, maybe they shave their head, they wear a crazy hair color, maybe they have lots of piercing, tattoos, whatever it is. There's always some element of tradition that is kept, some way in which these women are what women are supposed to be, quote-unquote, combined with some element of disruption, some sort of, I am a woman but I refuse to blank. If we, the audience, like the compromise that this woman found, we take inspiration. We use their answer to construct our own answer. So because we're all looking for answers all the time, and because we inevitably will borrow ideas from other humans, this is just a part of living in a society, living in a public life as a woman means that your very existence is treated oftentimes as an answer to this question of how do I want to live my life as a modern woman. And a lot of the times you are expected to defend it as if it was a thesis statement. You're treated like you're giving an answer by barely existing, and that answer is scrutinized, criticized, and almost always deemed both too radical and not feminist enough. When feminists argue that women are subjected to a lot more scrutiny on average than men when they live a public life, this is a big part of what we're talking about. Because like this way of treating public figures is very gendered. Like if you think about it, no one would criticize Jeff Bezos for, I don't know, encouraging young boys to exploit the working class just because he's doing his job. Even though, like, is he not doing that? That's a story for another time. We seem to have a very personal involvement with the women in the public eye that is rarely there for men. And I think that a part of that is because we use these women as role models, meaning that we take apart their answer to construct our own answer. To go back to the Gen Z bimbo, because at this point I am a parody of myself, when Chrissy Rebecca yells at the camera,
"Stop living life for other people and start living life for you. If you want to dye your hair pink, dye your hair pink. If you want to find a way to fight Elon Musk, find a way to fight Elon Musk. If you want to dress like a slut, dress like a slut. Okay? Life is short, you're a baddie, and I love you."
She seems to say that, at least in my opinion, primarily to herself. Like, this is obviously a young woman who is still in the process of figuring out who she is and how to love herself. She's working through a lot of trauma. She has most of her personal development ahead of her because she's in her early 20s, and she has found comfort in bleaching her hair, doing her makeup, and wearing a cute little crop top. That's really it. She doesn't have much more answers than any of us, but because we are all starved for direction, because none of us know what we're supposed to do, suddenly she's tasked with the responsibility of giving a perfectly feminist answer, almost to justify her own existence, or she will be accused of, I don't know, choice feminism, pandering to the male gaze, like, I don't know, I think this is very unfair. The thing is, women in the public eye are already having to deal with a regular, plain old misogyny, which makes the way in which we use feminism to bash each other over the head all the more weird. Like, sometimes it feels like we use feminism to intellectualize away people's struggles, to call other women stupid or vapid or sluts, in a way that won't get us called out, in the way that, like, you know, do it the old plain misogynistic way would. If the answer of some woman to the question of how do I want to live my life as a modern woman becomes popular enough, and if enough people start copying her and taking inspiration, then all hell breaks loose, I guess. Like, the think pieces panopticon unleashes its power, right? Like, we take notice, we denote it as a movement, and we give it a name. This is where the criticism starts pouring in, albeit with good intentions, usually for not being feminist enough. So, young girls joking that they are entering their Fleabag era becomes dissociative feminism and gets called out for allowing white women to tune out from the troubles of the world. Chrissy Rebecca wearing a crop top in her room and making memes about running men over with the car, which is, by the way, obviously a joke, becomes like Gen Z bimboism, which is bad because it panders to the male gaze or whatever. And this is like a thing of a lot of communities on the internet. Like the child-free community is deemed misogynistic for not calling out the ineptitude of fathers enough. Some 18-year-old talking about her favorite clothes becomes encouraging consumerism and supporting fast fashion. Girl boss feminism, which was a rudimental attempt to do feminism in the mainstream, but moved the popular opinion in some direction, well, that's not class conscious enough. And then like, am I the only one who's kind of tired? By the way, all of these criticisms are fair and reasonable. I even agree with some of these points. I'm just saying that putting pressure on women who stopped being teenagers 5 minutes ago to be perfect beacons of feminism is kind of absurd. And also so many of these like weird internet offshoots of feminism that come and go like TikTok trends are just born of a few people's answer to the question of how do I want to live my life as a modern woman. And that answer is always in changing, is always a work in progress. Oftentimes, some women are just living their lives. They don't even know that they're answering a question that we're all secretly asking, and they are a bit shocked to find out about the discourse surrounding them once they become famous enough to be branded a type of feminism. And I don't know, call me crazy, but maybe 21-year-old women should be able to post about their lives on the internet without being treated like an academic thesis statement, demanding to be defended. One of my favorite video essayists, which is Roy Deschanel, highly recommended, she's excellent. She wrote a wonderful think piece about this phenomenon applied to the whole Fleabag era. So I'll quote her.
It seems that women's art tends to be self-cannibalizing these days. We're at a point where whenever a piece of women's media created by women, whenever this media breaks some sort of threshold and receives universal recognition, it's immediately stripped of all detail, context, and originality, and then placed into a subcategory of feminism to then be picked apart for its failure to be adequately feminist.
When women turn themselves into media by posting on the internet, the same exact scrutiny is applied to their lives. They are judged, but as stories with themes and messages, not as people with flaws and personalities. So am I suggesting that we stop thinking about everything? No, of course not. But maybe we can pay more attention to the people on the other side of the screen. In our perpetual search for what it means to have value, as a woman, as a feminist, as a person, whatever, we pick apart other people's answer to the same question. But we often forget the empathy somewhere along the road. These women who shave the body parts that we don't, who wear the makeup that we don't, who show the cleavage that we don't, they aren't our enemy. And they are definitely not trying to tell us how to live our lives. No one can do that, no matter how much we would like to have some guidance. So I think we have a responsibility to recognize that whatever woman we're criticizing is answering the same impossible question that we are, and she is navigating the same cruel world that we are. So maybe next time we're trying to answer that impossible question and we find ourselves judging another woman for how she behaves, let's sprinkle in some empathy. Because if you ask me, that seems like a great way to live our lives as modern women. These are a lot of difficult words.
For sure. Do you want to...
I am a tiny bimbo with a pink corset. Why am I saying all of these big fancy words? I am and always will be a feminist. Thank you. That is a tongue twister. Why did I write it like that? That's impossible to say. Can you scroll it back? No. With the mainstreaming of feminism, talking points that... No, wait, sorry. I cocked it up. Because on one side, it's very intimate, like the decision on who to date, whether or not to shave. I want to do it again, sorry.